Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the podcast where we give you the highlights of what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo every single week. This is episode 13. We've been doing this for a couple months now. I considered, they say 13 is bad luck, so hopefully nothing goes horribly wrong on this episode. But now that I said that, something's going to go horribly wrong. But anyways, Dennis, we've got Dennis Gagliardato here, the bearer of good luck.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got Nicholas Schade, who hopefully is also good luck.
Hi, everyone.
And don't worry, everyone, Louise is still just trucking along. He's not with us today, but he will be with us again next week. We've got a lot to talk about, some very exciting things this week. We're going to start off talking about a new Final Fantasy game coming to Switch. Not really a new game, but we'll get into that. We've got some Fire Emblem rumors. Apparently there might be a new Fire Emblem game coming in the near future and I'm not talking about the Fire Emblem Warriors game that's coming out imminently. We've got something else that is exciting. We've got some Overwatch 2 stuff to talk about. Monster Hunter Sunbreak got a demo this week, so we'll be talking about that a little bit. And then we've got some smaller stuff at the end, a few other games we want to touch base on. But first, let's get into the big news that came as a surprise to a lot of people. Apparently, there is a remaster of the PSP game Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. And this is quite the substantial improvement over the original. If you haven't seen the trailer yet, really go check it out. I mean, looking at this remaster back-to-back with the original PSP game, it's a sight to behold. But yeah, this was a prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII that was released exclusively on the PSP in 2008, I think, here in the West, and has not yet been brought over to any other systems. And so last week, Square Enix announced they are remastering this game and bringing it to modern consoles, including the Switch. Dennis, first thought, are you surprised that this game is coming to Switch?
Well, I don't want to use the word surprised as much as I want to use the word thrilled, because when you look at how this remake is, just how it is visually and performance-wise, just compared to some of the other remakes we've seen lately, it definitely can, I think, run on the Switch like pretty easily. I think, well, maybe not easily, but with a little bit of effort, I think you can absolutely get it to run on the Switch. I mean, the remake compared to the original absolutely looks beautiful, but it definitely doesn't look on par as, say, how Final Fantasy VII Remake looks, which is just, weird to say photorealistic, considering it still has that Square Enix signature sort of art direction to it. But I mean, those games are gorgeous though, and
right.
So, but this one definitely still has that sort of feeling of the original Crisis Core, but looking definitely more updated. But yeah, no, I'm super excited to hear this. Honestly, out of everything that they announced through that little short presentation, that to me was the most exciting, because this is not only a remake. I would have been happy with a remaster, but this is something that I've wanted now for, I don't even know how long, because I know when I first got my Vita, for example, my PS Vita, one of the first games I looked at or tried looking in the store for was Crisis Core Final Fantasy on PSP, because it did have the capabilities of playing PSP games digitally, and there were a lot of PSP games that were available through the PlayStation Network, but Crisis Core was not one of them. And then I looked up why, and apparently it all came down to a licensed song in the credits. That's all it was a licensed song in the credits.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Gacked, I guess.
I don't know, like, what
Genesis thing, but yeah.
Yeah, but regardless of like what it was, my thought about it was like, well, why not just? I mean, it's credits. Why just mute it? Like like most people, with all due respect to credits, and
it's too easy, Dennis.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there would have been an easy way around that, but maybe I'm too hopeful, but I don't know. But anyways, here we are now with a remake announcement, and it's super exciting. It's coming to Switch, which I'm stoked for. Crisis Core. I actually have that game physically on PSP, so it was one of the first PSP games I played. I have a lot of history with that game, and it's honestly one of my favorite Final Fantasies. Even though at the time I think it wasn't really appreciated too much, but I think it has aged relatively well, just because people look back on it kind of fondly now, just because of how it was trying to do something different, which at the time I don't think people were ready for. But now Final Fantasy, especially with all these different spin-offs now, Final Fantasy has taken, much like Resident Evil, so many different directions and genres and stuff like that, where it's like, you can't, it's not a turn-based RPG anymore. I'm sorry. I mean, yes, I do love those, but Final Fantasy can be whatever it wants now. We just had Chocobo GP a couple months ago. You know what I mean? So, like, it can be whatever it wants to be now. So,
that's true, including Chocobo GP, which is
exactly.
just kind of in a league of its own.
You did want to be that.
No one really wanted it to be that. Okay, but so Dennis, I do want to hear more about your thoughts about this game, since you do have some history with it, and I love Final Fantasy. I mostly am familiar with some of the more modern ones. The first Final Fantasy game that I actually beat all the way through was 12, when they brought over the Zodiac Age version to the Switch, and that was great. And the Final Fantasy VII games, I mean, they are just cranking out these new versions, and they're all really amazing from a visual perspective, and just the ways that they're reinventing the gameplay of the original PlayStation Classic. And I particularly am looking forward to, I don't think this is confirmed for Switch yet, but Ever Crisis, which is a mobile-only kind of taking all the separate Final Fantasy VII stories from all the different media and putting them into one game. But Nicholas, I mean, when you've seen this trailer, you've seen this game, is this something you're looking forward to, or have you played this game before, or will this be your first time maybe checking it out on the Switch?
So I haven't played Crisis Core before. I don't have a huge amount of experience with FF7. I have played through most of the original game before, but that's about it. I am absolutely looking forward to this. It's crazy that this is coming to the platform in the first place, especially because 7 Remake just doesn't have a presence on it at all. And I'm just really looking forward to playing it. I know enough of FF7 story and Remake story that playing through Crisis Core won't be too confusing or anything. I'll be able to grasp everything that's going on. And I'm very interested in seeing how the game will compare to an older version. Particularly because 7 Remake, I mean, I think most people know at this point, 7 Remake is not a super straightforward remake. It's doing several things to change up the story in some little ways. And I'm very curious if they're going to do the same thing with Crisis Core. Because what we've seen so far... what we've seen so far, the game looks pretty much the same, but just remastered. In terms of the cutscenes, it basically just looks like the same camera angles, the same poses, the same animations. I think even the voice acting in the trailer is the same dialogue that's lifted from the original Crisis Core, which is interesting in itself because I believe that Square Enix recasted Zack Fair for FF7, since he does have a small speaking role in that game. For FF7 Remake, I should specify. And yet they're still using that old Zack voice for the dialogue, at least in the trailer, of Reunion, which is pretty interesting.
Well, I guess the original game did not have full voice acting because that's one of the features that they're touting for this remaster. Dennis, is that true?
Yeah, there was just a lot of PSP games back in the day that where voice acting was just limited, just because you had you could only put so much of those UMDs, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it had your typical sort of grunts and stuff like that. People going, stuff like that. But in terms of voice acting, it was definitely limited for sure. Yeah,
you can't have a JRPG without lots of grunting.
No,
it's just a basic rule.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't be immersive enough, right? You wouldn't know you're actually
of course not. No, you wouldn't know you're swinging a sword. Yeah.
Right.
No, Nicholas, I really, that is a really good question about whether or not they are going to change up the story of this game, because this is technically a prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII, and I haven't played the remake yet. I bought it just the other day because I wanted to experience the full trilogy of the remakes altogether, but I don't think I'll be able to be that patient. But yeah, now that I know this prequel is going to be accessible, I'm wondering like, oh, maybe I should start with this, and I think there might be a lot of folks out there who are kind of thinking that. Dennis, do you think this prequel, like, I'm sure you've played the Final Fantasy VII remake at this point.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to do with the story of this one? Do you think they're going to change it up? Do you think it'll still be a good place to start for people who might be new to this storyline?
Oh, absolutely. I think with this one, so far, it's just like what Nicholas said, where a lot of it looks pretty much the same, honestly, from what we've seen in the trailer. If they do change it up a bit, I don't think they would change it up too much, just because while they're turning Final Fantasy VII now into what is essentially its own trilogy, Crisis Core, if I remember correctly, already wasn't, compared to other Final Fantasies, that big of a game. So, stripping it even further, I think would kind of be unnecessary. And I think so long as you have that core experience there, there's not really much to change or really a reason to change it, even if you're trying to accommodate for the differences of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think you can still, keep it the same without really affecting those at all. And hopefully it does stay the same, because honestly, again, other than a overhaul, of visuals, I mean, again, I liked it at the time. I'm more than likely gonna still like it now, and there's not much really that needs to be made different other than some basic quality of life, functionalities that may have not aged well back in the PSP days. So.
Right. Well, and there are some gameplay differences. I mean, one of the things that Square Enix has talked about already at this point is the combat and how they are really modernizing it. Apparently, the original game did not really have like a formal combo system. The attacks didn't really chain together smoothly. And if you look at the gameplay side by side, I mean, it's just night and day. The gameplay in this new version looks almost totally different because of how they're smoothing together these attacks. There's like, I heard they're changing up dodges. They're making it easier to access your abilities during combat. So, I mean, this is always something that fascinates me is, they're building this game as a remaster, and I can totally see why they would do that, because most of it comes down to the visuals, but it is such a stark, it looks like it's going to be a pretty stark mechanical improvement as well. And I'm wondering, like, does this maybe cross that line into like a full-on remake territory, even though it looks like they're keeping the bones of the game the same, the overall structure?
I think what we're seeing here is kind of akin to Last of Us Part 1, right? And kind of what they're doing there, where like it's like a remake of the remaster kind of, but it, other than like, like you were saying, just those sort of visual overhauls and like you have the bones and the structures there, it's weird, right? Because it looks like it's a remake, but then it seems like a remaster, but it looks like more has been done than a typical remaster also, right? But since everything
absolutely.
is 1-1, it makes you just wonder, especially when you see this side by side, it is like frame by frame identical, right? So it's
right.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's just like, what at this point they're kind of blurring the line between remake and remaster, right? It's very interesting.
It's also very interesting when you have something like Ever Crisis coming out, which is supposed to be providing a faithful recreation of the games. And then you have Reunion, which is basically also doing that. Although it's Ever Crisis is doing Crisis Core in what looks to be an FF7, like an original FF7 style, which kind of makes it a demake of Crisis Core in a very strange way. So I guess you could argue Reunion is just a normal remaster or remake. Well, the Ever Crisis version is a demake, but it's still a very odd situation going on where you have these two different versions of Crisis Core being produced and probably releasing around the same time.
Right. Well, and then you wonder, like I just looked, and Ever Crisis is not confirmed for Switch, and that feels like a really natural fit, because that's like going to be like the entire story. They're designing that game for mobile phones.
Yeah, that
I can't
feels
see
like a
why
Square
they
Enix
wouldn't.
decision.
Yeah, that's
It
100%,
very much
yeah.
does. It very much does. All right. Well, yeah. Fingers crossed for that one. But yeah, looking forward to Final Fantasy. Oh wait, let me get this in the right order here. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Gosh, that is definitely a Square Enix title right there. That is pegged to come to Switch sometime this winter, so folks will not have too long to wait for that game. In other news, this is a game that is not yet confirmed for Switch, but we've been talking a lot about Fire Emblem lately on this show with Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which is the Dynasty Warriors style Fire Emblem game coming to Switch very, very soon. And there have been some rumors recently that there is actually another Fire Emblem game coming to Switch, which, Nicholas, you actually kind of predicted not too long ago during our E3 predictions episode, which is awesome. And we're going to get into talking about these rumors, so if you don't want to be spoiled on what is potentially going to happen in this game, consider this your big spoiler warning. You can check out the time codes in the YouTube description or on Spotify or wherever you're listening, and just click over to our next topic, which should be Overwatch 2. So if you don't want to get spoiled, now's your chance. We're going to be talking about the rumors and the leaked screenshots for this new Fire Emblem game. All right, so Nicholas, you predicted this. How does it feel to be right?
It's interesting,
Maybe.
certainly. I mean, the reason why I predicted this because there had already been quite a few rumors that a new Fire Emblem was in the works and might be releasing this year. So this doesn't come as a huge surprise, but it's interesting to see it confirmed. It's bizarre to have a Fire Emblem releasing the same year as another spin-off, but I think technically that's also what happened when the original Fire Emblem Warriors released. I believe Fire Emblem Echoes released the same year, so I guess it's not that bizarre.
Yeah, not impossible. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's just kind of the basic rundown of what happened. And again, these are rumors. We just gave the spoiler warning just in case because we don't want to, make anyone upset. But these are rumors. So Emily Rogers, if you know that name, she has a history of leaking things related to Nintendo on social media. Sometimes she's right, sometimes she's not. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. But basically what she said is that there's a new Fire Emblem game coming. It's a brand new story. It is a collaboration between the current makers of the Fire Emblem games, as well as Koei Tecmo, who is helping out with 3 Hopes, and Gust, which helps with the Atelier games and other RPGs. The graphics are supposed to be a pretty big improvement over 3 Houses. There were some screenshots that were shared that looked pretty rough, but they definitely looked like Fire Emblem, and they do not look like a current Fire Emblem game. They were in Chinese, so we can't, it's not like 100% certain. But yeah, it looked very different from the Fire Emblem games we've seen up to this point. And apparently this game has been finished for over a year, which, I mean, that's really surprising to me. Dennis, what do you make of that this Fire Emblem game, Nintendo's just been sitting on it?
It doesn't surprise me too much. I mean, but also it just makes you wonder if, what we see now is even what we might get later on, because they do, when you look at the images, they do look rough. And compared to, 3 Houses, you wouldn't release something in that state. So more than likely, those pictures are from an early build of that game. So it probably looks substantially different now, not just in terms of graphics, but probably the UI, the aesthetic, everything. I think they were just like, let's just get some of these base, the base foundation down, work out the structure of this game, and then we'll go in for the for the details and the polish. But yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me too much. I mean, wouldn't be the first time we get multiple Fire Emblem games in 1 year, which is crazy to think about when you think about how Awakening was going to be the last one if it wasn't successful.
Right. Right.
So, and now it's just Fire Emblem left and right, which is really, I mean, it's fantastic.
You gotta
It's
love it.
Yeah, it's you got to count your blessings with something like this. So, yeah, it's great. But but the rumors that it's been finished now for over a year. It's like, well, what? Then what is there to wait for really at that point? Especially with this year's already packed. I don't know about you guys, but I think this year's already packed for Nintendo. So
Yeah.
it's where are you going to fit it, honestly? Like, where could you reasonably fit it without overshadowing something else? With Splatoon,
if I'm being, well, yeah, and if I'm being totally realistic, like, I'm already like a decade behind on games at this point. Like, there are so many things I'm not gonna. I mean, no one is ever totally caught up, but I'm like, yeah, there's no way if this Fire Emblem game comes out, I don't think I'm gonna have time to review it. I don't think I'm gonna have time to play it. Like, it's just not. They can delay it more. That's fine.
Yeah, I'd be completely okay if they were like, look, 2023, even though it's been done forever and you could have played it last year, but now 2023, I'm like, oh, great. Because there's already so much going on, and I feel like Three Hopes is also going to be a massive game, probably. So, like, that, and then, next month with Xenoblade, and then, the month after that with, Splatoon early on, and then again in October, potentially. I feel like October will be a great month for Bayonetta, right? Mm-hmm. And then November with Pokemon, and then December with, I'm sure they have something, but it's too much at the moment, honestly. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, but we still have to. We're still waiting on Pikmin 4, aren't we? Miyamoto said he was done with that years ago, but that still remains to be seen. So,
so getting into some of the actual details of like this leak, we don't know too much, and this is all speculation. But someone actually posted some screenshots, and I think our wonderful editor Louise will probably be showing off some of these. You may have already seen them in the segment, but the thing that is, I guess, kind of talking about maybe the main character of this game. They have very, very colorful red and blue hair.
They have Joy-Con hair.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yes, they do have Joy-Con hair. And apparently one of the things about them is that their mother is a dragon, and they have the ability to summon characters from previous titles. Which all just sounds very strange, because I'm playing through Fire Emblem Awakening right now, and that game is, I feel like, pretty grounded fantasy overall. I mean, there's definitely, some magic and things like that, but it's not, there's nothing like totally crazy in that game. I don't think, personally. Maybe I'm just not at that point yet. But the idea of like someone having like parents who's a dragon is like, I don't know. Maybe that's in line with the rest of the series, but to me that's like, wow.
Yeah, you might want to keep playing.
Okay, yeah, I'm not super far into Awakening yet, so don't listen to me, everyone. That's okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of the details, it's honestly the whole dragon parents thing is not super unexpected. There's another game I can think of that basically has a similar plot in that respect, but the summoning heroes is an interesting thing, because even though that wasn't really featured in Three Houses at all, it was a pretty prominent part of Awakening, and I believe in some ways Fates, where either by using Amiibo you could summon those Amiibo characters, the Fire Emblem characters specifically. I don't think you could summon anyone else. And I think Awakening also had this card system. I think it was tied to something called the Outrealms. Mm-hmm.
So there was like some DLC that you could get, but also you could just through Spot Pass, you could basically invite these characters and they would kind of appear on your map, and you could like trade with them sometimes, you could challenge them. In certain situations, you could get some of them to like join your party, and they're like playable units. So yeah, it was a big part of Awakening.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they seem to be bringing that back as a primary mechanic. It's a little odd, certainly, because it's kind of putting the emphasis on the older characters, the characters from past games, as opposed to your newer squad, which is I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest. It'll depend heavily on how exactly it's implemented, if they become like a permanent part of your squad, or if it's a situation where you just call them in for like one battle and then they leave or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things that's like it's hard to really understand unless we see it in action. Do you think this whole leak is legit? Do you think this is a real thing, or do you think it could be something else?
I think it probably is. There have been, like I said, there have been rumors of a Fire Emblem happening for quite a while. Some of these details are pretty specific. The stuff with Gust is particularly interesting because the screenshots for the game popped up, I want to say either the same day or the following day, and the screenshots look pretty legit. If nothing else, they have that mix of a Fire Emblem, like Fire Emblem style, but also very clearly made by Gust. You can see that in their character faces, especially the female ones, where they look very much like Atelier characters. And someone faking that within a day would be very, very surprising. Because it's obviously not super polished like we said, but there's enough here that I would be incredibly surprised if within a day they had basically seen that post, gotten all the details down, and made all of these 4 different screenshots, all in this like correct style. I don't think there's really any way this could go other than this being legit.
So I have a theory about this actually. Okay, and here's my theory. So, Nintendo, they've been in and out of the Chinese video game market for a while. And if this game has really been done for a year, like the leak claims, in order for games to get released in China, just because of the politics of that country, everything has to go through the Chinese censorship board, basically. So that means if this game is done, and if they're planning on revealing it soon, then there's a good chance that that game is probably going through the censors board right now, or everything has to get approved to be released. So it's probably going through that approval process, and that could be why it's in Chinese. Maybe not, but that's just kind of my theory, if this is all real.
Yeah, I remember seeing some reasoning as to why it could be in China, some part of like the development team being there or something, but I honestly could not tell you for sure what I remember seeing.
Well, hey, maybe we will see more if there's ever a Nintendo Direct ever again. That is also not a guarantee at this point, but well, we will keep you guys posted if we catch wind of anything else interesting regarding this supposed new Fire Emblem game, and hopefully, if it is real, we will get to see it sometime soon. Let's kind of switch gears here for a second and talk about a game that is a little more tangible, coming sooner than I think some people maybe expected. Overwatch 2. This is it's a sequel to Overwatch. I think Dennis probably has some thoughts on the concept of this game even being a sequel or not. But yeah, this is the free-to-play sequel to Overwatch that is launching on Switch later this year, very, very soon. I think it's penciled in for September right now. Oh no, October 4th.
October 4th.
And we got, I guess, a little bit more details about it. They were talking about the roadmap of the game, and the big thing being that this game is not going to have loot boxes, which is a pretty big shift from the state of Overwatch 1 as it is right now. So Dennis, tell me a little bit about your thoughts about Overwatch 2. Should this game exist?
I'm gonna lean towards yes, and not because I'm a fan of it. I'm gonna try to think about it in the most unbiased way possible. But I would say yes, just because. So the game originally came out in 2016, right? And as is with any live service game, I think over time, no matter how refreshing you keep your content, you need to find a way to engage with players on a frequent enough basis so that they keep coming back and give them a good reason to come back, right? Now, the past year or two especially, and I'm sure a large part of this has to do with the fact that internally over at Activision Blizzard, everyone's heard news by this point with all the crazy nonsense that's going on, right? So, and all the investigations that are happening there. So, basically events which really drove Overwatch's community engagement have been declining a lot. They used to be almost on a bi-monthly basis, but now it seems like outside of events, we don't really see new skins anymore, and the characters, forget it. I can't even remember what the last one was. I know it wasn't Moira. I think there was someone else, maybe Baptiste or.
It's been a little while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and so I think this was long overdue. Now there's pros and cons to it. The biggest con I think would be the most obvious one, which is that it's going to be free to play, right? But at the same time, I get it because again, this is a game that even despite its success and despite being the one that popularized loot boxes and it quickly became a billion-dollar property with merchandise everywhere, it was just Overwatch was the game, right? For from all of 2016, I believe it even won Game of the Year at the Game Awards, right? And then another award in 2017 for Best Ongoing Game, and so on and so forth. So it's just been winning awards left and right with such a diverse, incredible cast of characters. But again,
it really has slowed down, and I think that the reason why I asked this question of should this game exist is because what we've seen in the game, it doesn't look drastically different from a gameplay perspective from the first Overwatch, and a lot of people think, why go and put out this whole new release? Just kind of do something to revitalize the game that people are already playing,
Yeah, it's very much a marketing push.
And that's why it's hard to sort of explain like what Overwatch 2 really is, because it really is just more Overwatch at the end of the day, right? But they are changing a couple things. Instead of a 6v6, it is a 5v5. So the meta is going to change tremendously. And then with its free-to-play services, like you were saying, loot boxes are gone now, right? And I actually liked the way Overwatch handled its loot boxes. It never felt predatory or just completely scammy. It felt proper. It was what I want from a loot box system. Though with the popularity of battle passes, that doesn't surprise me either, just because I do think that at this point, that is the smarter route to go. You get a lot more in a shorter period of time. They are going to be updating this every 2 to 3 months, I believe. And that is going to be consistent, so you know what you're going into. I think that communication is there versus the sort of spotty messaging they've had over the last couple of years. And I just feel like now Overwatch 2 is like, let's restart this, let's reboot this basically. Make it feel fresh. We're starting from scratch again. However, we're going to keep things consistent here on. And then now they're going to have that Microsoft money, right? So they can just pump in more money soon with them being, bought now by Microsoft. So,
here's my thing. So with the battle pass structure, and I guess this is just more of a general thing, because I am not the type of I enjoy a good multiplayer experience every now and then. But multiplayer games are not my main game. And I have found, at least for myself, as a more casual player when it comes to these online multiplayer shooters, cooperative or otherwise, that the battle pass structure, it really seems more designed to reward the people who are playing this game every day. Because you usually have to buy in and, you have like a hard deadline. You're like, all right, I got to grind out all this stuff by this date, or whatever, I don't get to finish my battle pass, which, the people who are really invested in this game, they're going to do that anyways. But the people who are more casual players, which I imagine they're trying to reach more people by, basically releasing an upgraded version, free to play of the original game with some new ideas and this new system. I don't know. I feel like, for the more casual players, they might have a hard time getting them into that loop. I mean, maybe not. Clearly there's a reason why they're doing it. It clearly has worked for a lot of other games, but I just know, at least for me personally, I always have a hard time getting invested in that type of thing for these kind of quicker pick up and play sessions.
Yeah, I think, and I actually agree with you, because I'm actually, despite me being so in love with Overwatch, I'm actually the same way. I don't care for multiplayer games in general, and I especially don't care for competitive. But something about Overwatch has always gripped me, and I think it's just been the just how charismatic all the characters are, and it makes me want to jump back in the art style and just how fluid everything feels. But battle passes, there's a right way to do a battle pass and there's a wrong way to do a battle pass. And more often than not, you always see the wrong way to do a battle pass, where it's just like, hey, these are for the people, like you said, that are playing all the time. If you're a casual player, you're not getting anything out of this, but hey, we want you to spend the money anyways, even though this won't benefit you at all, right? But you look at something like the way sort of what's it going, like Fortnite handles their battle pass, where the biggest thing is the quest system that they have. They have a quest system that basically it refreshes every day. You have dailies, you have weeklies, you have milestones and stuff like that. And each of these gives you so much experience, and every level is the same amount of experience every time, and you get a set amount of they call them like stars or something, like battle stars or something. You can spend them on honestly whatever you want, which is really, really nice considering most battle passes are like, all right, once you get a new level, whatever's on level 3, that's what you get, right? But when you accrue a certain amount of stars after every level that you gain, let's just say you have 15 stars, well, this item is 2 stars, this item is 5 stars, this item is 7 stars, this item is, 3 stars. You just pick and choose whatever you want. I think that's great, because then it becomes like a store almost, if you just get things that you want rather than grinding like crazy. I mean, you still have to grind if you want it all, obviously, but if you want to play it casually, you can still get something out of that, and I think that's super smart. And I'm just hoping Overwatch has some sort of quest system in there, even though it seems like the battle pass is going to be linear with like, here's level 1, here's level 2, here's level 3, but I just want them to be like, all right, well, get 3 headshots in one game, okay, that's not a problem, you just be Widowmaker for 2 games, and then you get 10,000 experience.
Simple. Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
right?
I don't think they're going to do that, but no, that would be a much better approach. I agree.
Yeah.
Now, Nicholas, I'm not sure if you're aware, but at the Nintendo Switch, there is a voice chat app that you can get for your smartphone, and it's so handy that it's only been used in like 3 games. So this is something I want your opinion on, Nicholas. So Overwatch is it's a cooperative game. It's a game where it really helps when you can talk to people, and I'm just not seeing how. I mean, I know you can play the first Overwatch on Switch, can't you? Is Overwatch 1 on Switch?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't heard anything about it in so long. I'm like,
I reviewed it for the site
sometimes. Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. So do you think they're going to come into Overwatch 2 with a better solution to voice chat on Switch? Especially considering this game is going to be like cross progression with other consoles.
Finally.
I'm not sure.
I mean, you would hope so, but also I'm not sure. I mean, there are a handful of games on Switch that do have built-in voice chat, but it's not a lot of them. It would definitely be something that could help sell a Switch version, but I don't know if it's such a priority that they would necessarily take the time to specifically implement it. I don't know exactly how much it would take to implement that kind of system into a version that previously did not have it. It would be very nice to have. I personally have not played Overwatch, but it's clear that it is, like you said, a very cooperative game. It needs a lot of coordination. Having that easier access just to be able to talk to random people, I would imagine is very helpful. I think Dennis can probably attest to that. I don't expect them to change that. It would certainly be nice if they did. I can tell you that unsurprisingly, the Nintendo Switch, voice app on mobile is not exactly something that I have used ever. I mostly play with a friend, load up Splatoon, check on the app for whatever is on with rotation, see that it gives me a notification of, hey, do you want to go on a call? And just kind of back out of that and keep talking to my friend on Discord. So
there you go. Yeah, that's the classic strategy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I can't really say I'm particularly excited about Overwatch 2. I only really ever played a little bit of the first one, and frankly, what I've seen of this game, it doesn't really look like substantial enough to change my mind about like really wanting to play this or not. But hey, we'll see. You never know. Sometimes these games come out and they just blow up.
It is free to play. So that's something that's not going for it now.
Yeah,
You'll know where to
nothing
find
to
me.
lose. There you go. Dennis will be online, folks. You can go join his lobby. All right. Well, Overwatch 2 coming out on October 4th for Switch and other platforms. And if we have more to talk about it, we will keep you posted. In addition to Overwatch 2 being free to play, here's something else that's free to play that you can play right now on your Switch. It is a demo for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which is the new expansion for Monster Hunter Rise. And Nicholas, you've been playing a bit of this demo.
I have. It's been really fun. It's kind of in the normal style of the Monster Hunter demos, where they are a terrible way of demoing the game to someone that does not know enough about Monster Hunter. But if you are experienced with the franchise and already know what's going on, it can be a really fun experience to just give you the chance to try out a whole bunch of different weapons, a whole bunch of different mechanics tied to these different weapons, and some of the new monsters that are in the game. So
you are experienced with this franchise. So,
I would like to believe so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So now that you've gotten your hands on this demo, I mean, what do you think? Do you think this is something that, I mean, obviously the Monster Hunter fans are already excited for this, but what are your big takeaways from actually getting hands-on with this game?
Honestly, I'm more excited than I had been previously playing the demo. The demo itself introduced a new area, which is a remake of an area from a past game, I think from a game of like 10 years ago or so. And this isn't exactly new. Base Monster Hunter Rise had a couple of those areas that were remakes of past games, but this one feels different in that it's more faithful to the original, and it also just feels better. It feels like, which I think is reflective of a wider change in Sunbreak, which is that it feels like the devs are very directly responding to some of the criticisms that were leveled at Monster Hunter Rise. So something like the areas being remakes, the past ones didn't feel super faithful. They felt like new areas in the game with a veneer of, hey, this is the thing you remember. And so now they've changed that, and the area genuinely feels like the old one. Other examples are things like weapon balancing, where there were a decent amount of complaints in base Rise that some weapons were just far too strong, and others seriously needed a buff. And looking at how the weapons perform in the Sunbreak demo, and looking, kind of data mining, looking at the damage values, they've balanced that as well. The weapons that used to have worse damage got overall buffs across the board, and some of the weapons that were incredibly strong got a few nerfs. There's other things like the fact that they removed rampages, which was a system in the base game that many people were not super fond of, and now that's no longer something that people have to rely on. So just across the board, it really does seem like they are directly addressing some of the issues that people had with the base game, which is very, very nice to see.
Right. Well, although if those are all, I mean, quality of life things, I mean, normally that's the kind of thing you'd expect to see just as a patch to the base game rather than in the DLC, right?
To some extent. Some of these things are more reflective of a change, like an attitude change in development, kind of. Things like the weapons being adjusted is definitely something you could see in some form of bigger patch. But it's a lot of like the design philosophy behind making these different areas of like, hey, instead of trying to remake something that vaguely resembles what we had in the past, we're going to pretty much stick to it and just tack on a few little things. Or we're going to see what people did not like in the base game and kind of restructure our content to kind of exclude some of that. That's sort of more so what I mean, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, no, that does make sense. And Dennis, have you played any of this demo at all? Are you planning on picking up the Sunbreak expansion on June 30th?
Yeah, it looks really good. I have not played the demo, however. I honestly didn't play as much of Monster Hunter Rise as I thought I was going to. I did enjoy the bit that I did play, but it wasn't something that I got super invested in. It was one of those games that unfortunately just came out at a really not so good time for me, because I just got so overwhelmed with everything else that was releasing around that time. So Monster Hunter sort of took a step back for me in terms of me prioritizing what I'm gonna invest a lot of my time into.
Of course.
So and Monster Hunter is a game you need to invest either all your time into or no time into because it does not accommodate for a pick up and play for a couple of minutes at a time sort of lifestyle. So, but
which is so strange because it looks like the type of game that would be great for that,
and
especially on the Switch.
And you know what does that really well is Dauntless. Because I can jump into Dauntless for 5 minutes. Very rarely do I spend more than 10 minutes on a hunt. Dauntless does that really well. So there's no reason why Monster Hunter can't have at least a mode, right, where it's like a rush mode. I don't know if that's a thing, but like a Monster Hunter Rush, that would be like super, super fun. But
the iOS exclusive Monster Hunter.
Oh God, don't. There's already been a couple of varying quality.
It'll just be an auto battler.
You swing your sword with gyro controls.
Yeah, but the Monster Hunter game I did spend just hundreds of hours on was Monster Hunter Stories 2. That game was the Monster Hunter game that I really just jumped into and fell in love with. So Monster Hunter Rise took another step back because of that. Well, I was like, I'm gonna just spend all my time with stories. But yeah. I mean, it's something that I see myself playing in the future, but it's not something that I'll jump into day one unless the stars align properly, right? And it's just like finally I can really invest all my time into this. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, to your point about just the Monster Hunter games being massive time sinks, I totally agree. And it still is like, it's shocking to me that this game is getting such a substantial upgrade so soon after the base game comes out. Nicholas, as far as just like the environments and stuff go in this game, like what do you think of like the actual new content in this game? New environments, new monsters. What did you get to play?
So the demo featured 4 quests. 2 were returning monsters in old areas, basically areas from base Rise. 1 was a new monster in the new area I mentioned, the jungle. And the 4th was fighting the flagship monster, the sort of vampire dragon of the cover art, in the older Rise lava area. So basically 1 entirely new environment and monster, and then 1 new monster in an older environment.
Okay.
And everything I played just felt fantastic. One of the new monsters is one that was present in a past game, so now it's returned and they made some little changes to its moveset, and it just felt really good. Everything felt faithful and yet still kind of adjusted to compensate for the new tools that we have in Sunbreak and Rise. And the flagship monster fight, as is typical of these demos, they always make that fight ridiculously difficult, where you have a strict 15-minute time limit, and they give the monster enough damage that it will kill you with 1 to 2 attacks with basically everything it does. So
right, they don't want you to get too good at the demo.
Yeah, if you enjoy a challenge, there's definitely some challenge to be had there. But yeah, it's nice to see. Everything that was in the demo was great. Everything that we've seen in the recent trailers has been great. The last trailer in particular that happened basically right before they announced the demo was earlier, I think it was Monday night or Tuesday this week. Or last week, sorry, was very nice to see. They brought back a fan favorite in Gormagala, which was a very well-beloved flagship monster from, I think, 2013 with Monster Hunter 4. And more interestingly, they brought back a monster from the Japan-exclusive MMO that ran for over 10 years and just shut down a couple of years ago. Which is interesting because there had never been any real big crossover from that MMO, which was called Frontier, to the mainline games, and this is the first instance of that in literally ever since the MMO was produced. So in over 10 years, probably 12-ish years, this is the first time that's ever happened, which is pretty interesting and exciting.
Yeah, no, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of fan service in this game for people who just really, want those kind of deeper cuts into like the past of Monster Hunter. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, even just the title updates that were announced seemed pretty expansive, arguably more so than the past game Iceborne, and the first monster announced with them is, again, a monster that hasn't been in a game for, like, 10 years. So, like you said, it really does seem like they're trying to make this appeal to fans, and I think they're doing a pretty good job.
All right. Well, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, that is dropping for the Switch on June 30th, and I think I know what Nicholas will be playing around that time. Well, actually, you've got quite a lot on your plate at the moment, Nicholas, so I'll be curious to see if you actually do get to that right when it comes out or not. But yeah, that's right around the corner, so stay tuned for more about Monster Hunter Sunbreak. All right, so we're coming up on the end of the show, but there are just a few small things I want to bring up real quick, just some things that are interesting. So Dennis, when I'm going to pitch this to you, and you just give me your quick thoughts here.
Right,
WarioWare plus Atari. Well, what does that look like in your head to you?
That is not something I would greenlight. I don't think that's not something I would personally greenlight. With all due respect to Atari and their legacy of games, I don't see that working well.
The 1-2 switch of Atari.
Well, Dennis, as it happens, there's a game called Atari Mania coming this summer, and it is pretty much exactly that. It is they're calling it a micro game title, so very obvious where they're getting their inspiration from.
Sure.
I love this. Their description says it offers a robust storyline told through a selection of 150 micro games, each incorporating beloved Atari classics from the 1970s and 80s. Golden era of gaming. I'm really curious about that robust storyline part.
Yeah, that's honestly hard not to laugh at, just because I'm thinking like, all right, so what do you have, like mocap done for these games also, and like, what's going on, like Oscar-winning writers, like what's going on here?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked, Dennis, because there's even more great gems in this description. Here's the quote: "In Atari Mania, you'll step into the shoes of caretaker of the Atari Vault, tasked with watching over the storehouse of retro-tastic Atari games. One night, a dead pixel appears, and then soon enough, all heck breaks loose."
Wow.
Oh my god, is that it?
I'm sold.
Well, there's more. It says, as you journey through the vault, you find that familiar and beloved games have begun to warp and mutate and meld into a series of increasingly wild challenges. Yeah, it's pretty bonkers. But honestly, I'm looking at the trailer for it, and it looks pretty fun. I think I could be sold on the idea of Atari micro games.
That's I don't know. I don't think something like that can't be fun, because honestly those micro games, like, they can get super addicting, right? Like with WarioWare, or just like if you do, you see like a lot of smaller devices like do that too, those little rip-off devices that sell for like $20, that they have they have a bunch of smaller games thrown in there. Like, they can be addicting, just these little, I don't know, palate cleansers, I guess, right? They just spend like 30 seconds at a time playing each one, if that. So I can see it being something that they can make work, I guess. Good. Yeah. But again, I personally, if they came to me with the pitch, I'd be like, no, not here. So I wouldn't greenlight it.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I think, Atari, they have actually kind of been on a roll lately. They've been bringing back some of their older games with kind of these, they're calling them things like there was like Asteroids Recharged, which is like, it's Asteroids, but it's like a very modern version of it. It's still got the same gameplay, but it's got totally new visuals that kind of like echo the original. They've been doing that with a lot of their games lately, and so it seems like they're trying to take these very, very, very old games and make them relevant. And I give them credit for making the effort, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they have a legacy. I mean, they're also responsible for the video game crash, right? But but they do have a.
I think we can blame ET specifically for that.
Well, of course, yeah. But I mean, they're trying to come back, and I respect what they're doing, especially with the Atari brand that name is immediately recognizable and synonymous with video games, right? Just because of again the legacy that they had. So, and they're trying. I mean, I think last year or 2 years ago, they finally released their once again, believe it or not, a console, the Atari VCS.
Oh yeah, that thing was weird.
It is super weird, but honestly, it's like made out of a Raspberry Pi, and you can mod it like crazy. So it's kind of awesome actually, because it's not just a system. You can do so much with it, like so much with it. It's like what people are doing with the Steam Deck now, adding all this emulation and not just it being purely a Steam system. You can do whatever with it. It's the Atari VCS is kind of like that, honestly, and it's kind of awesome. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, their marketing department is just trash, so no one knows about it. So.
That's amazing.
Well,
yeah. Nicholas, I'm sure you're playing on your Atari VCS right now.
Oh, all the time, every day.
It took a lot for him to jump into this podcast.
Yeah, I just had to tear myself away from it.
Yeah, he was deep into Galaga, man. You just took him away from that.
Had a high score going and all, man. Come on.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, hey, if you're interested in this crazy Atari experiment, you don't have too long to wait because it's coming out later this year, and apparently it is only going to be $20, and it is a digital-only release at the moment. So I have some hope for this one. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have some news about Digimon Survive, which has been in, let's just say it's been in development hell for a long time. And we got a release date announcement a little while ago, but since then we've been getting some trailers and getting to actually see some more of the gameplay. That game is coming out very soon, July 29th, which is, I'm pretty sure, the same day as Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Which is just going to be just a hell of a day for RPG fans.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Nicholas, have you been following this game at all, Digimon Survive? The Switch got some other Digimon RPGs a while back, but...
Yeah, so I have actually been following it a little loosely. I played some of the older DS Digimon games when I was younger, and I mean, Digimon used to be a bit of a craze. I definitely got into it, and not to say that I'm still like super crazy about it, but it's a fun memory, and I do like looking back at it every now and then. Like you mentioned, there have been Digimon games on the Switch before. They were ports of, I believe, PS4 games, the two Digimon Cyber Sleuth games. I do own them, although I haven't gone around to playing them yet.
And Vita.
Vita? Okay.
Yeah.
This one's looking kind of interesting because it's very much in a different style where it is part visual novel, part strategy RPG, which is definitely not what I would have expected out of a Digimon game, the visual novel part especially. So I am very interested how this one sticks the landing, because as I understand it, Digimon games are usually pretty good. At least I know the Cyber Sleuth games are praised as being pretty good RPGs. So I'm curious how well they're going to do.
Some of my favorite RPGs.
I'm curious how well they're going to do this kind of half visual novel, half strategy game style. It's also funny because in a way it reminds me of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rem, which it's also kind of has that unique style of being a visual novel
in a weird way.
Yeah, like it's funny. That's not a style that I would have expected to see twice in 1 year.
It looks, I mean, Dennis, sounds like you've played the Cyber Sleuth games. It looks very dark compared to those games, which I think is the main thing that is surprising to me.
Yeah, they definitely take a lot more of darker themes and adult tones with this one. The Cyber Sleuth games were brilliant. I platinumed, on PlayStation Vita, I platinumed the first Cyber Sleuth. Then Hacker's Memory I played a bunch of as well. I love those games. Those games are, like, to me, I think, just brilliant. But Survive, I mean, man, this game's been in development. It was first announced in 2018, so let's just take that in for a moment.
Okay.
2018.
I guess it's not as long as it seems like a lot longer.
It seems like longer because it was supposed to come out in 2019, and then 2020, and then 2021, and then finally, I think it's firm, official, set in stone, July 29th, right? So, like, finally it's happening. For now. For now, yeah. Who knows? It may end up coming out, Maybe that's what we're getting in, in October.
Digimon
Never mind,
Survive
it'll be
is the
Digimon Survive.
Kingdom Hearts 3 of Bandai Namco.
Yeah. Oh my god, I know. It's crazy. But no, Digimon Survive looks really, really interesting because the art direction is just so striking right away, right? So even if it's a visual novel, strategy RPG, whatever it ends up being, this weird hybrid of the two, I think it's going to be great. And it's not like you can't pull something like that off, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with a game called Utawe Rumono. It's like a crazy, it never got a localized title, but yeah, it's like a crazy Japanese. Yeah,
it has gotten localized actually in recent years, and I think.
The game has, but I meant like the title.
okay.
The title like is still in Japanese, like even in the West.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I've played those games. Those games are like fantastic. Honestly, some of the best stories I've experienced in years. Those games. So it's a shame not many people know about them. But you can absolutely mix the visual novel and strategy RPG format like seamlessly, actually. Now the problem comes down to balancing, and I think with Digimon being as big of a property as it is, I mean, not anywhere near the scale of Pokemon, obviously, but it still has a large following, and you have to learn to balance the two, because Utawa de Rumono had. You could go 3 hours with a visual novel before you finally jumped into a strategy RPG battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that with Digimon Survive. You want to have at least at most maybe 20, 30 minutes of visual novel segments before you get into a meaty 45-minute battle with your strategy RPGs. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, the game's been in, like you said, development hell for quite some time, but I'm hoping that it'll come out better for it. I know they also switched engines mid-development, so that also extended development time, and then of course COVID and everything. So,
right.
I'm hoping for the best, because since day one I've been following this, and since day one I've been super stoked for it. So, it has the potential to be something super special. But again, you always have to worry with insane development cycles where anything.
Yeah, you never really know with something like this until it's actually out. And it is interesting, like how big of like a gap there was where there's just nothing, and then all of a sudden, here's trailers, here's a release date, it's coming out next month. So
right.
So yeah.
For what it's worth, I think they have
Digimon Survive.
For what it's worth, I think they have mentioned that kind of visual novel versus strategy RPG gap, I guess. And they've said that I believe it was like 75% will be visual novel and the rest will be strategy RPG. So it's definitely heavily weighed on the visual novel side.
Interesting.
That's kind of cool, actually. That actually makes me more interested in it. I love a good story-focused game.
Yeah, and I love visual novels in general too. But that'll be interesting because it makes you wonder. Then what in development. Did they change the story a bunch? Because a visual novel is heavily focused on its narrative structure, right? So like, unless it's non-linear, and even then, what took so long, really? I would love to see it behind the scenes, honestly. I'm not trying to be like just rude about it, but I'm genuinely curious. I just want to know, like, how was the development cycle planned out? What was the scheduling like? Where did you reach that point where you spoke with the team, brought everybody to the meeting room? It was like, guys, I don't think we're gonna hit these targets. We're gonna have to make the unfortunate decision to, extend this even further, and
right.
Yeah.
Well, they do say that your choices affect the gameplay, and that there are multiple endings in this game. So
okay.
So that kind of, I don't know. It seems to me like maybe there was an increase in scope at some point, at least from that level. But yeah, I'm sure someone from Nintendo Everything will be reviewing this game when it comes out. So
that will be me.
That will be Dennis. So stay tuned for that in the near future. And that just about wraps up our show for this week, at least in terms of news. But before we go, we're going to get to our classic segment of what has everyone been playing lately. I'll start this time because I have a review for this game coming up pretty shortly. I've been playing this game that just kind of popped on my radar out of nowhere. It's called Lost Ruins, and it is a 2D side-scrolling. I hesitate to call it a Metroidvania, but that's probably the easiest way to just at a glance categorize it. It's a very good video game, and it really came out of nowhere for me. Overall, basically what you're doing is you've got this kind of large environment. It's these ruins environment, and you play as this kind of anime art style schoolgirl who is like dropped into this world, and she's very clueless about what's going on, and it's a pretty standard trope. The story is not really what's interesting about this game. The thing that is really interesting about this game is the combat. It is for a game that is like just kind of this somewhat non-linear 2D side scroller. The combat is very challenging. There are a lot of like kind of traps scattered around the environment. Certain enemies can like launch like different things out of the environment, like acid bottles that you can then like set on fire, and so there's like a little physics system at play. There's a big like focus on like resources and just like the scarcity of everything. So like when you go to a checkpoint in this game, you don't really heal or anything, so you really have to manage your health items very carefully as you progress through. It's a really good game, and I think I hope more people get to play it actually, because it was a big surprise.
Yeah, I actually ended up actually I got it earlier today. Actually, I haven't played it just yet, but
nice.
Yeah, it's been on my radar for a bit. I was gonna wait for your review, but I don't know, something about it. Sometimes you look at a game and you're just like, that sort of speaks to me. So you just kind of jump in. This was kind of one of those games. So, but I haven't played it just yet. I think I'm gonna hold off just for a few more days until your review comes up, and then I'll read it and then kind of compare it to what I end up experiencing it with. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be curious to hear what you think about it. Yeah, it's also just a very pretty game. The pixel art is really well done. The animations are all very good. There's really good attention to detail. Like you even see like these like splashes and bubbles coming up when your character is like walking through water. Like, it's really good, and it looks amazing on the OLED. If you have the Switch OLED, it's an absolute stunner on that. So yeah, stay tuned for my review. That should be out soon, if not already. So keep your eyes peeled to NintendoEverything.com for that. Nicholas, what have you been playing this week?
Honestly, not too much. I've spent most of my time with the Sunbreak demo, as we mentioned previously. So it's mostly just been playing through that, figuring out what all the weapons are like, and trying my hand at the like difficult boss fight. So that's been what I spent most of my time doing. I have tried to start replaying Fire Emblem Warriors, the first one, to be clear. I haven't gotten too much further in that, but I would like to have that beat by the end of this week, just so I can have that kind of, off the table before Three Hopes comes out. But yeah, that's basically it.
Got it. Doing your gaming homework, it sounds like.
Yeah, just, kind of clearing the backlog.
No, that is a big part of the hobby for a lot of people. Very cool. And Dennis, what have you been digging into this week?
Yeah, so two games, but the primary one would be Neon White. Neon White,
Yes.
Actually, the review for it just went up yesterday, actually, at NintendoEverything.com. But man, I'm happy I can finally talk about it, and I'm glad that I was kind of going around reading other people's reviews and just, or even just, anyone who's been playing it, really just kind of their thoughts on it. And I'm glad everyone's feeling the same way that I'm feeling, which it is a fantastic game. Like, it is so good. If you're a fan
Very glowing reviews, yeah.
Yes, very much. As expected too. I mean, we attended a preview event a couple months ago, back in March, I believe. Annapurna Interactive reached out to us and invited us, and we got to speak with Ben Esposito, the director of the game, for a little bit, and you could tell right away that it was going to be something special. And now, having played it, it definitely is. If you're a fan of speedrunning games or parkour type games, or just games that require quick reflexes and just get your blood pumping because of the adrenaline, man, this is gonna really hit a sweet spot for you, because it's very similar to games like Ghost Runner and games like even more recently Severed Steel came out. That's another fun little indie game where it is fast, that game. And so it's you just go around, you you're dead, and then you end up in heaven, but you have to prove your worth in heaven, and by doing that, you have to basically rid of all these demons in heaven, and it's sort of like a competition. You and other neons is what you're called. You have these special masks on, and which is why you see all the masks on all the trailers and whatnot. But if they take that off, their face explodes basically. So try to keep that on for the time being while you complete the levels, and yeah, no, it's just the levels are all beautifully designed. It is fluid on Switch. Like I was a little worried at first because I was like, this game would be perfect on PC, and that's where I intended on getting it. But of course, we got a code for it on Switch, and I was a little worried because usually games like these I don't ever want to play on Switch, right? Because I've played Ghost Runner on Switch, and I played Ghost Runner on PC, for example. On PC, beautiful, right? Chef's kiss, right? Switch, uninstalling it right away. No, I did not play that game for longer than an hour. Yeah, like get that game out of my face. So I was worried, but thankfully it is fine tuned, especially if you're playing with the gyros. Now you absolutely don't need to; it is still fluid and clean without the gyro controls. But if you do play with the gyro controls, it is just it is bread and butter. It really is. It really truly is.
I've heard very good things about the game's gyro controls.
Your review, yeah, the gyro controls continue to be underrated. And I really just wish we would see more of that just in gaming as a whole. Yeah. But yeah, this game, I mean, I was intrigued in it after I read your preview and, after just kind of hearing a little bit about it. I'm just really, was not super sold on the idea of, I'm not a big roguelite fan and I'm not a big card game fan. So I was like, I don't really think I'm going to like this game very much, but everyone's raving about it, and the first-person combat looks good. I love parkour in video games, and the theme is really interesting. So maybe I'll get to it at some point. But
yeah, I think this game is very hard to describe, honestly, because what you were saying about card games and roguelites, it seems like that on the surface, right? But I promise you, playing it is actually nothing like that at all. Think of the best way to explain it and again, there's no real right way to explain it, but how I would explain it to someone who I am trying to pitch this game to convince them to get it is think of time trials in Mirror's Edge. It's Mirror's Edge time trials would be the best way to explain this, but obviously with a vastly different aesthetic. So, but yeah, Mirror's Edge is one of my favorite games. Yeah, absolutely. Mirror's Edge is one of my favorite games of all time. So that and Catalyst. So Neon White definitely speaks to me so much, and it's just so good. The characters are great, and if you're a fan, or if you grew up in the '90s and early 2000s and you were exposed to that sort of era of anime, also, man, you just all the references and it clicks, man. It clicks because you feel like you're kind of just hanging out with friends at that point, people who just really just know you, even though they're not speaking to you, right? It's really cool. It's really, really cool. But right. Neon White, highly recommend that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the hot take, Dennis. And the game is definitely on my radar.
Same.
And there's a lot more we could talk about this week, but I think we gotta call it a wrap for tonight. So, thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 13 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. Hey, this episode was not a disaster. So, unlucky number 13. Unlucky? I'm not convinced. But, but
it's all about perception.
It's all about how you look at things. So yeah, that has been episode 13. Thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, you can follow us on the streaming service of your choice. Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, blah, that one. We are everywhere, so wherever is convenient for you, go and give us a follow and help us spread the word. And that is pretty much it. We will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. Take care.